This is my hobby, the greatest hobby. Everyone, Hobbyist here. We are back at it again with our Talisman character exploration guide. And previously, we have covered the phenomenal Dragon Priestess and just how much control she has over this expansion. But now, let us go ahead and get into the next character. This character that we're going to be covering inside of the Dragon expansion is a fearless and insightful traveler who, through discipline and bravery, has uncovered the mysteries of taming dragons, turning them from ferocious enemies to loyal companions. Indeed, this is the Dragon Rider. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Dragon Rider's character card and see what it is that she has to offer us. So as we can see here, the Dragon Rider has a strength of 3 and a craft of 4, which looks a lot more balanced in comparison to the Dragon Priestess. And as we can see here, we've got ourselves that dragon head logo towards the bottom there, and that is the symbol of the Dragon expansion. All of the alternate ending cards and the various components that encompass the Dragon expansion are going to bear this logo. So if you're not particularly interested in playing with the Dragon expansion, this is definitely something to look out for, as it just makes things way easier when it comes to separating it from the rest of your Talisman adventures. So for the rest of the Dragon Rider's character card, we can see that she's got a fate of 3, an average life of 4, a good character who starts in the forest. So, from a strategic standpoint, we can see that when it comes to just the Dragon expansion, there's no particular immediate advantage to being in the forest. But as you expand and you play with other expansions, we know that the Dragon Rider is the closest to the Woodland expansion, because the entrance is going to be right behind the forest. So if that's an area you want to dip into when it comes to thinking big picture, it's definitely an option for you to take on. But then as we start to look at the Dragon Rider's actual character abilities, we can see that, well, she's only got 2 abilities. How are we covering a brand new expansion when we only got 2 character abilities? Well, if I'm being completely honest with you guys, it's primarily due to the fact that for most characters, the fewer abilities that they possess, the higher the quality is what compensates for those lack of numbers. So let's go ahead and go into the Dragon Rider's first character ability, which says, whenever you engage a dragon in battle or psychic combat, add 3 to your attack roll. So this is pretty interesting because inside of just the base game, if you're thinking way small picture, normally there's an object that's called the Holy Lance that only good characters can wield, to where it more so just adds 3 to your strength when it comes to dragons. But the fact that the Dragon Rider adds 3 to her strength and craft, and remember, we've already got a strength of 3 and a craft of 4, means that generally, when we're facing dragons, we're going to be either attacking with a strength of 6, plus whatever we roll, or with a craft of 7, plus whatever we roll. So, with a lot of these dragons, and the fact that we've got so many dragons inside of the Dragon expansion, it's definitely an amazing way to start taking out dragons, because inside of any one game of Talisman, excluding expansions like the Dungeon, dragons are going to be super high in strength, or super high in craft, in comparison to most average creatures that you're going to be facing in any particular one game. So being able to accumulate those dragons, and to be able to use them as trophies and to turn them in to boost your strength and craft is very useful. However, with the Dragon Rider, dragons serve a secondary purpose, and that all is entailed in our second character ability. If you defeat a dragon, you may capture it and take it as a follower instead of a trophy. You may only have 1 captured dragon at a time. While you have a captured dragon, you gain the following benefit. After you roll the die for your move, you may add up to 3 to the score. You may roll 2 dice in battle and psychic combat and use the higher attack roll to determine your attack score. So, as we can very clearly see, with the Dragon Rider, the goal is to find a good dragon be able to capture for yourself. Because it makes sense, she's a dragon rider. And the fact that you gain all these benefits, first starting with the fact that you can add up to 3 to your movement score. That is the most movement boost inside of this game, period. Not even characters like the Scout inside of the Woodlands compared to what the Dragon Rider has with the Dragon. The fact that you can add up to 3 instead of adding to 1 is a major difference between finding the right spaces or running into certain traps. Inside of the Dragon expansion in particular, if there's certain dragons that you don't want to be facing, or if the Firelands is active and Firelands tokens are starting to spread everywhere, having that additional 3 boosts could be a difference between you burning to death and you being able to reach certain spaces. Honestly, it is just fantastic. It really is. And the fact that you essentially have the Warrior's ability to roll 2 dice and pick the higher between the two, not only for battle, but for psychic combat too, you essentially cover yourself for most dragons. Because at that point, you can just use the rest of them. And the nifty part with the Dragon Rider when it comes to this character ability is that the strength of the dragon that you capture doesn't really matter in regards to being able to access these abilities. The size also doesn't matter because there are small dragons in here. There's some pretty weak dragons in here that you can use. But as long as the card says dragon on it, it's pretty much fair game to take them on. You can have probably the weakest dragon that I can think of inside of the Draconic Lord decks. It's probably a Strength 3, Strength 4 dragon. And you can simply use that as your boost throughout the entire game. If you want to get a stronger dragon to take on, to capture and that sort of thing, you can. If you want to get a high craft dragon, you can. But there's no benefit or a loss when it comes to being able to take on these dragons. And the fact that these dragons provide this much of a boost to you is honestly super great inside of this expansion. And when it comes to strategizing as far as going up against the Draconic Lords, it's mostly fair game. I mean, we can see that the craft is higher, so Grilipus' dragons might be something that you go after. But then you could also go after the weaker Cadorus dragons, who generally have a mixture of strength and craft-based dragons, but those strength-based dragons aren't going to be as strong in comparison to Varthrax, who has nothing but strength-based things to fight, and are generally more difficult and offer more challenges in comparison to the mixture that you could get, sometimes good, sometimes bad, with a Cadorus deck. But more importantly, aside from wanting to capture these dragons and from wanting to use these dragons to kind of boost yourself all the way up to the top, what benefits does that serve when you're thinking towards the end game, whether you're using the Dragon Realms or the Dragon Tower? I'm going to go ahead and show you. This is the Dragon Realm, and as we mentioned in our Dragon tutorial, how the Dragon Realm is going to more so focus on the scales playing a role, whether it's the scales on the actual Draconic Lord cards, or the scales that you already possess. Those are going to be the main difference in how easy or how difficult it's going to be. In addition, you also need a Talisman in order to make it all the way to the top of the Crown of Command. This is just more so a dragon theme in a region. You're not looking for something that's super complex or something that is outside of your realm of expertise when it comes to playing Talisman. So, when it comes to the Dragon Rider, you're honestly open-ended as far as which path you want to take. If you want to take the craft route, going up towards the figures right, or if you want to go the strength route, going to straight ahead, then that is something that is entirely up to you when it comes to being able to formulate what your endgame strategy is if you manage to take this route. But just remember that you need a Talisman in order to make it to the top. Otherwise, your trek's going to be all for nothing. So, with the Dragon Realm being the easier part, how does this function inside of the Dragon Tower. So the Dragon Tower, we can see that it's quite a bit of a different story. But with the Dragon Rider and the fact that having dragons gives so many benefits to the Dragon Rider when it comes to combating any of the three Draconic Lords, there's no particular Dragon King that you want to necessarily go after. Sure, if you were more so strength focused, or if you were more so craft focused, you would want to go after Grilipus or Varthrax. But honestly, any of these Draconic Lords are fair game when it comes to the Dragon Rider, because of the fact that you're able to roll 2 dice and add those boosts towards your attack score. And I almost forgot to mention this, but this doesn't even include any weapons that you already find. Because if you remember with our battles in Psychic Combat back in the basics, we mentioned how it's always going to be whatever your craft is, plus whatever weapons or spells that you have that are modifying, and then it's your attack roll at the same time. So with Dragon Rider, you got to think of it like this. As you're rotating through, each of the Draconic Lords and the various cards are going to start appearing on your way up to the top. If you have a decent weapon, let's say Holy Lance, which would be really good, not just against dragons, but the fact that you already add 3 on top of that. Just think of it that way. You already add 3. So let's say we use our 2 dice, and one of them is 6. So we do a 6 with our 3 strength, which is already an attack score 9, and that's adding our 3 on top of that with our first character ability, which says if we're facing a dragon, is already adding 3. So that is already an attack score of 12, just to put in perspective how good the Dragon Rider can be, especially if you have a dragon on your side. So you definitely want to have a dragon on your side, and when you're making your way up to the top, you can sort of flip-flop and adapt. There's no rigid or super hard Draconic Lord unless you find certain dragons to be too difficult early on. But honestly, when it comes to an endgame purpose of the Dragon Rider, she's still pretty good, and you're still pretty set, just as long as you make sure that you can acquire a dragon at some point in between all of your journey. But overall, what do I think of the Dragon Rider? I think the Dragon Rider is a pretty solid character, if you ask me. The fact that having a dragon and being able to have the tools necessary to combat dragons is something that the Dragon Rider really specializes in, and is one of those characters where if she shows up and the Dragon Priestess is already taken, this is still a pretty solid runner-up, if you ask me. There's definitely some cons inside of her playstyle, but if you can find a way to work around all that, she's still going to be a pretty good character overall. So yes, this concludes the Dragon Rider. I thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.